Captain Maya Rodriguez was having what she generously called a typical Tuesday when the distress beacon started screaming through her ship's comm system. Which is to say, she was 3 drinks into her morning coffee, arguing with her ship's AI about whether duct tape qualified as a legitimate hull repair, and wondering why she'd chosen a career that involved being shot at by strangers for money. "Captain," came the nervous chatter of Klik, her 6-armed Exari engineer, who was currently using 4 hands to frantically check readouts while the other 2 worried at his antenna. "The beacon signature is problematic." "Define problematic," Maya said, not looking up from her navigation charts. "Are we talking might explode problematic or definitely going to explode, but we can probably outrun it problematic?" "Valthek," Klik whispered, like he was afraid saying it too loud might summon demons. Maya's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. The Valthek Empire had been wiped out 6 months ago by the Hegemony, turned into what Admiral Vex's propaganda machine called a cautionary tale about the dangers of aggressive expansion. What they actually were was the galaxy's most effective warrior culture, which made them inconvenient for a fascist regime trying to bring order to the universe through the time-tested method of shooting everyone who disagreed with them. "Well," Maya said, setting down her coffee and cracking her knuckles, "I guess we're about to find out if extinct warrior races tip well." 20 minutes later, they were staring at an escape pod that looked like it had been through a blender fight with a supernova. Inside was what remained of Thane Korvas, the legendary undefeated champion of the Valthek Empire. He was unconscious, bleeding from about 14 different places, and somehow still managing to look intimidating while passed out in what was basically a glorified space coffin. "He's alive," Klik announced, running a medical scanner over the pod with the enthusiasm of someone checking for plague rats. Though I use the term alive in the most technical sense possible. "Great," Maya muttered, initiating the docking sequence. Another passenger who probably doesn't believe in paying for gas. When Thane Korvas regained consciousness 3 hours later, the first thing he did was try to kill Maya. The second thing he did was look confused when she casually sidestepped his attack and offered him a sandwich. "Turkey and Swiss," she said helpfully. "Klik makes excellent bread, assuming you don't mind the occasional mechanical oil flavor." Thane stared at her like she'd just offered him a live grenade. "You are human." "Guilty as charged," Maya said. "Captain Maya Rodriguez, professional salvage operator and part-time galactic disappointment. Welcome aboard the Liability." Thane Korvas had the kind of presence that made gravity seem negotiable. Even wounded and wearing borrowed coveralls that were 3 sizes too small, he carried himself like a man who'd never lost a fight and wasn't planning to start now. Unfortunately for Maya's blood pressure, he also had the kind of honor code that made tax law look flexible. "I am in your debt, human," he said, which in Maya's experience was usually followed by something expensive, dangerous, or both. "By the ancient laws of my people, I must offer you single combat to determine my worthiness of this rescue." Maya blinked. "Or you could just, say thanks and not try to murder me." "That would be dishonorable." "So is bleeding all over my clean floors, but you don't see me demanding satisfaction," Maya pointed out. "Besides, I heard you guys were extinct. Doesn't that make your ancient laws kind of moot?" Thane's expression darkened like a storm front. "My people were betrayed, slaughtered by the Hegemony while attending what was supposed to be a peace summit. I am the last, and I will have vengeance or I will die trying." "Yeah, that's kind of what I was afraid of," Maya muttered. "Look, big guy, I appreciate the whole last of my kind seeking revenge thing. But have you considered that maybe running face first into the galaxy's largest military might not be the most effective strategy? I have heard that humans are the galaxy's newest warrior race," Thane said, ignoring her entirely. "Defeat me in honorable combat, and I will accept that the universe has chosen my path." Maya was about to explain that humans were less warrior race and more vindictive primates with impulse control issues when her ship's proximity alarm started screaming. On the main display, 3 Hegemony cruisers dropped out of hyperspace like angry metal sharks. "Well," she said, watching the lead ship's weapon systems power up, "this day just keeps getting better." The comm system crackled to life, and Admiral Vex's voice filled the bridge with the kind of smug authority that made Maya want to punch things. Attention, salvage vessel. You are harboring a known galactic terrorist. Surrender the Valthek immediately, and you will be compensated for your cooperation. Maya looked at Thane, who was gripping his ceremonial sword with the kind of intensity usually reserved for people about to do something historically stupid. Then she looked at Klik, who was making the kind of anxious, chittering noise he usually made right before something exploded. What's the compensation? Maya asked over the comm. 100,000 credits and safe passage out of Hegemony space. Tempting, Maya said. Counter-offer. You turn around, go home, and pretend you never saw us. And I don't broadcast footage of your ships getting outmaneuvered by a salvage operator and a supposedly dead warrior to every news network in the galaxy. There was a pause. Then Vex's voice came back, considerably less smug. You have 30 seconds to comply before we open fire. Maya grinned and cracked her knuckles. Klik, spin up the engines. Thane, you still want that duel? More than anything, Thane said. And for the first time since they'd rescued him, he was smiling. Great, Maya said. Because I'm pretty sure we're about to have it? Maya had always believed that if you were going to do something stupid, you should do it with style. Which is why she decided to have her honored duel with a 7-foot alien warrior in the middle of an asteroid field while being chased by 3 Hegemony cruisers. This is perhaps the single worst idea I have ever witnessed, Klik announced from the engineering station, using all 6 arms to keep the Liability from becoming an unscheduled crater in the nearest asteroid. And I once watched a Zephyrian try to mate with a plasma conduit. Details, Klik, Maya said, strapping herself into her pilot's harness. Thane, you ready for this? The Valthek champion was secured in the gunner's position, looking slightly confused but game for whatever insanity Maya had planned. I must admit, human, your concept of single combat is unconventional. Yeah, well, humans don't really do conventional, Maya said, diving the Liability between 2 rotating asteroids while the Hegemony ships tried to get a target lock. Here's how this works. You want to fight me? We fight with ships. Winner gets to decide what we do about your whole revenge quest situation. This is not how honor duels work, Thane protested, though he was already getting familiar with the weapons controls. It is now, Maya said, pulling a maneuver that would have made a physics professor weep. Klik, give me everything we've got on the tractor beam. Captain, the tractor beam is not designed for combat applications, Klik said, but his hands were already dancing over the controls. It's for salvage operations and the occasional stubborn cargo container. Trust me, Maya said, locking onto a house-sized chunk of asteroid and whipping it toward the Hegemony formation. I've got a plan. What followed could generously be called a duel, if you were willing to stretch the definition to include physics-defying chase scene with improvised weaponry. Maya used the asteroid field like a 3-dimensional playground, turning rocks into missiles, debris into shields, and somehow managing to make Thane's ceremonial weapons console into a surprisingly effective anti-ship system. You fight like a coward, Thane said, but he was grinning as he said it, launching another barrage of jury-rigged torpedo equivalents at Maya's position. I fight like someone who wants to win, Maya replied, using a gravity slingshot to reverse direction and come at him from an impossible angle. Cowardice is just good tactical thinking with better marketing. The Hegemony ships were having trouble following the engagement, mostly because it kept shifting from location to location at speeds that made their tactical computers have nervous breakdowns. Maya and Thane were essentially playing the galaxy's most dangerous game of tag using asteroids, debris, and increasingly creative applications of ship systems. Captain Klik called out, I'm reading massive energy buildup from the Hegemony flagship. They're preparing to fire on both of us. Maya's grin got wider. Thane, you still think humans fight without honor? I am beginning to suspect, Thane said, watching Maya somehow turn a mining laser into a precision instrument of chaos, that human honor is simply more complicated than I understood. Good, Maya said, because we're about to get really complicated. Admiral Vex had built his career on the principle that overwhelming firepower solved most diplomatic problems. which is why, when faced with two ships playing what appeared to be three-dimensional chess in an asteroid field, his solution was to shoot everything until the problem went away. "Sir," Commander Zeph said from the tactical station, "perhaps we should consider that firing indiscriminately in an asteroid field might result in—" "I don't pay you to think, Commander," Vex snapped. "I pay you to follow orders. All ships, open fire. Destroy them both." What happened next was a masterclass in why sometimes thinking is actually part of the job description. The Hegemony ships opened up with everything they had, turning the asteroid field into a light show that could probably be seen from 3 systems away. Unfortunately for them, Maya and Thane were no longer where they appeared to be. Holographic projectors, Maya explained cheerfully over the comm channel she'd opened between their ships. "Klik rigged them up while we were having our little dance. Hope you don't mind that I've been cheating this entire time." "I am beginning to understand," Thane replied, "that human cheating is simply advanced strategy with better publicity." They were now working together, their supposed duel having transformed into something resembling actual cooperation. Maya's ship darted between asteroids like an angry wasp, drawing fire and confusing targeting systems, while Thane's borrowed fighter used his considerably better weapons training to hit things that needed hitting. "Sir," Commander Zeph said, watching his tactical display turn into something that looked like abstract art designed by someone having a seizure. "The human ship appears to be using our own weapons fire to destabilize asteroid rotation patterns, creating a cascading gravitational effect that's turning our formation into—" "Into what?" Vex demanded. "Into a target-rich environment for the enemy, sir." This was meh. Zeph reflected as he watched the Liability somehow use a cruiser's own torpedo spread to crack open an asteroid and to launch chunks of rock at precisely the right velocity to damage the ship that had fired them. Why he should have stayed in military academy instead of dropping out to join the family business of galactic conquest. Maya's voice crackled over the general communication frequency. "You know, Admiral, this would be a lot easier if you just went home. I'm pretty sure your crew has families they'd like to see again." "Never," Vex snarled. "The Hegemony does not retreat." "Yeah," Maya said, and Zeph could hear the grin in her voice. "That's kind of what I was counting on." Commander Zeph had about 3 seconds to realize what Maya meant before the first reports started coming in from across Hegemony space. Risings, rebellions, prison breaks on 17 worlds. And somehow, impossibly, all of it was being coordinated through a signal that seemed to be coming from their current location. "Sir," Zeph said quietly, "I think we've been played." Part 5, The Twist. Maya Rodriguez had learned 3 important things during her brief career as a professional disappointment. First, never trust anyone who uses the phrase "for the greater good" without irony. Second, always carry spare ammunition and a sense of humor. Third, the best way to win a fight was to make sure everyone else was fighting each other instead of you. "You've been broadcasting this entire time," Thane said over their private channel, and he sounded impressed despite himself. "Every second since we picked up your escape pod," Maya confirmed, watching the tactical display as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. "Klik's been running a little program that piggybacks on Hegemony communication networks. Turns out when you're running a galactic empire, you need really good communications infrastructure. And also turns out," Klik added nervously, "that really good communications infrastructure makes excellent distribution networks for things like prison world locations, guard schedules, and detailed tactical information about Hegemony fleet movements." On the main screen, Admiral Vex's face was turning an interesting shade of purple. "You're broadcasting classified military information to terrorist organizations across the galaxy." "I'm broadcasting public service announcements," Maya corrected. "Turns out a lot of those extinct species you've been telling everyone about are actually just really motivated prisoners. And now they know where their friends are." The reports kept coming in. The Zalari Consortium had seized control of 3 Hegemony supply depots. The Korthak Rebellion had liberated an entire prison moon. Someone calling themselves the Free Valthek Movement had just blown up a Hegemony recruitment center, which was particularly impressive since everyone thought the Valthek were extinct. "My people," Thane whispered. and Maya could hear the hope in his voice. Turns out genocide is only really effective if you actually commit it, Maya said. The hegemony has been keeping survivors from dozens of species as forced labor, cheaper than robots, and they don't require maintenance contracts. Commander Zeph's voice cut across the communication channel. Admiral, we're receiving retreat orders from High Command. The situation across 17 sectors has become untenable. We don't retreat, Vex snarled. Sir, with respect, we're not retreating, Zeph said. We're conducting a strategic withdrawal to deal with approximately 47 simultaneous uprisings that are currently in the process of dismantling our supply lines and communication networks and command structure. Maya laughed. You know what the best part is? I didn't actually plan any of this. I just gave everyone the information they needed and let them figure out what to do with it. Turns out people are really good at solving their own problems when they know what they are. This is impossible, Vex said. One human and a dead warrior cannot bring down an empire. You're right, Maya agreed. But one human, a supposedly dead warrior, and about 1 million really annoyed prisoners can make a pretty good start. The thing about humans, Admiral, is that we're excellent at making other people's problems into everyone's problems. It's like our species' superpower. Thane's laughter boomed across the communication channel. You have not defeated me in single combat, human. You have made single combat irrelevant. Yeah, well, Maya said, watching the Hegemony fleet begin its withdrawal as emergency signals flooded in from across their territory. Turns out the best way to win a duel is to start a revolution instead. 6 hours later, the Liability was docked at what used to be Hegemony Prison World Sigma-7, and was now being enthusiastically renamed Liberation Station by its former inmates. Maya stood on the observation deck, watching ships from dozens of supposedly extinct species arriving to pick up their people, and wondering if she should feel proud or terrified of what she'd accomplished. You realize, Thane said, joining her at the window, that you have fundamentally altered the balance of power in this galaxy. Yeah, Maya said, taking a sip of Klik's suspiciously strong coffee. That wasn't really the plan. I was just trying to avoid getting shot by your boyfriend, Admiral Vex. He was never my boyfriend, Thane said solemnly. Maya stared at him for a moment, then burst out laughing. Did you just make a joke? I am learning from human example, Thane said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. You won our duel, by the way. I formally concede. Technically, we never finished the duel, Maya pointed out. We got interrupted by that whole galactic revolution thing. You have achieved in one day what my entire civilization could not accomplish in centuries of warfare, Thane said. If that is not victory, then I do not understand the concept. Maya shrugged. Honestly, I think you guys were just overthinking it. Sometimes the best strategy is to not have a strategy. Just make things as complicated as possible for everyone else and see what happens. Klik scuttled up to them, carrying a data pad and looking vaguely nauseated. Captain, I've been running the numbers on the economic damage we've caused to the hegemony, and I believe the phrase you humans use is holy shit. That good, huh? Nah. Their entire military budget for the next 3 fiscal years just got redirected to riot control and infrastructure repair, Klik said. Also, 17 species have formally declared independence, the Galactic Trade Union is demanding reparations, and someone has started selling t-shirts that say I survived the Maya Rodriguez experience. Maya grinned. Are they making money? Surprisingly good margins, Klik admitted. Excellent. I want a cut. Thane shook his head, but he was smiling. You are the most dangerous person I have ever met, and you accomplished it by accident. Not entirely by accident, Maya said. I mean, I did name my ship the Liability for a reason. It's not just what it is, it's what I am. I'm everyone's problem, which makes everyone else everyone's problem, which eventually sorts itself out through the time-honored human tradition of making everything worse until it gets better. That is perhaps the most terrifying philosophy I have ever heard, Thane said. Yeah, well, Maya said, watching a ship full of liberated Valthek warriors dock at the station, it works. Later, as they prepared to leave Liberation Station and head for whatever adventure awaited them next, Klik asked the question that had been bothering him for hours. "Captain, what exactly did you do to Admiral Vex? The reports say he was found in his quarters. And I quote, in 23 pieces. Maya's grin was absolutely terrifying. "I kept my promise. I gave him a quick death." "But he's still alive," Thane pointed out. Yeah, Maya said, "but his career, his reputation, his fleet, his command structure, his supply lines, his prisoner workforce, his political support, his retirement fund, his strategic advantage, his tactical superiority, his communication networks, his propaganda machine, his recruitment programs, his economic stability, his territorial control, his military doctrine, his personal authority, his legacy, his empire, and his dignity are all very, very dead." She paused thoughtfully. "I may have miscounted. Could be 24 pieces." And as the Liability departed Liberation Station, bound for parts unknown, Maya Rodriguez reflected that sometimes the best way to solve a problem was to make it everyone else's problem. It was, after all, the human way.